Republicans have been historically resistant to any and all attempts to regulate guns in the country. In fact, some Democrats who lean conservative have been resistant. And it's interesting to see that after the mass shooting that took place in Las Vegas, killing 58 innocent individuals, now some Republicans and even the NRA are changing their tune about one specific part that the shooter was able to legally purchase. Now, this has to do with bump stocks. Bump stocks are devices that essentially turn a semi-automatic weapon to a weapon that acts as an automatic weapon. And police officials have confirmed that they found 12 weapons in the shooter's hotel room that were fashioned with bump stocks. Now, interestingly enough, the NRA has released a statement saying that, yeah, maybe Congress should consider regulation of this device. Let me read you their exact statement. Of course, there's a little political jab in the beginning of it. Despite the fact that the Obama administration approved the sale of bump stocks on at least 2 occasions, the National Rifle Association is calling on the ATF to immediately review whether these devices comply with federal law. The NRA believes that devices designed to allow semi-automatic rifles to function like fully automatic rifles should be subject to additional regulations.
So there's 2 things happening there. They say that the ATF should review these devices to see if they comply with federal law. They also say that the Obama administration okayed it. Who do you think okayed it? The ATF.
That's right.
It's a statement from the ATF. So this is a very strange thing to say. I love the second part. I love the second part where it says we think that we should have, the law which says no automatic weapons, which has been in place for since the 80s.
Yeah.
The spirit of that law is we don't want automatic weapons because we don't want rounds to be fired off that fast. We should make sure that in practice, that's what we're making sure happens, is that people don't fire off rounds that fast. But to send it back to the ATF, you're just doing the same thing again.
You're right. You are absolutely right about that. And I like that you specified it because look, what they were referring to when they said the Obama administration okayed these bump stocks was correct, but in revealing that, they also reveal that they might be a little disingenuous in their statement. So let me give you the historical context of it, okay? So I'm gonna skip ahead to graphic 19A. And there were 2 companies that were trying to market these bump stocks, but they were concerned about their legality. And so they wanted to make sure that they could talk to the government about it and make sure they're complying with federal laws. In marketing the devices, 2 Texas companies, Bumpfire Systems and Slide Fire Solutions, were apparently concerned that they would not be legal. But in June of 2010, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, or ATF, sent a letter saying that the company's bump stock product is a firearm part and is not regulated as a firearm under the Gun Control Act or the National Firearms Act. So that is the first time that the Obama administration okayed the bump stocks. Now, I was trying to find an example of the second time that the NRA referenced in their statement. I couldn't find anything, but the only thing I did find was that Dianne Feinstein introduced a bill back in January of 2013 asking to ban bump stocks. And Republicans and some Democrats were so resistant to that legislation, which also included other gun control measures, that it didn't even come up for a vote. So maybe that's the second time that they're referring to, but I don't see any other example of the Obama administration trying to ban it, trying to approve it.
Bump stock's not the only thing that allows your gun to do this.
Right.
That's what's so true. It's great. You want to say Obama okayed it? Fine, burn, you got me. I'm sorry. Oh, let's get rid of them.
Yeah.
What I'm concerned about now is we're gonna focus on bump stocks and not the other. I mean, there's so many devices out there. There's one that's like a glove that just has a little device on the end that goes like this. There's another one that's like a little clip that goes behind your gun, your trigger, so that you pull on the trigger and it pushes back. And that happens. There's another one that looks like a Gatling gun wheel that you just stick in there and you go like this and it shoots just as fast. When you read the actual letter that the ATF sent back to the manufacturers, who, to their credit, the makers of this were like, I want to make sure that it's legal. So they went through their process. If you read that, the ATF is like, I read my law, and my law says it needs to have certain, in order to ban something, it needs to be a gun with certain internal mechanisms that fire quickly, and this doesn't seem to have that. So the NRA is encouraging that regulations be put in place, but that would take an act of Congress, which they control.
You're right, and so the legislation that's written can't specifically single out bump stocks. It has to be written in such a way that makes it clear that any type of device that transforms a semi-automatic weapon to an automatic one is outlawed, it's banned, right? So look, that's why the wording of the legislation is so important. And my second point that's related to that is, and I'm guilty of this as well, and I want to be honest about it. A lot of times when it comes to people who are in Congress drafting this legislation, a lot of them don't even really understand how a lot of these weapons work or what's out there on the market. And I'm cognizant of that, and I'm also cognizant of my own limitations. So I try to be careful in what I propose, and I try to be careful about, understanding what I'm talking about, because I don't want to misinform anyone. But these are lawmakers who have strong positions on gun control or strong positions against them. And you just want to make sure that these lawmakers don't act out of emotion, and they actually look at the market and look at what's out there and draft legislation that's specific enough to deal with issues that would lead to terrible situations like this mass shooting.
But not even just out of emotion, out of a reflex is what it is.
Yeah.
Like there's this one quote from the Gun Owners of America that says, "We see this as an item that is certainly protected by the Second Amendment, and realistically they are already on the market, so passing the law banning them isn't going to stop the bad guys like this creep in Las Vegas." It's like this Second Amendment, say the word Second Amendment, evil will do evil, and move on.
Yeah, I actually want to cite that quote because it comes from a very specific person. His name is Eric Pratt. He is the executive director of Gun Owners of America. And he's basically saying well, it's already out there in the market and criminals are gonna be criminals, so whatever. I can't believe anyone buys that argument, because then you can apply that argument to anything. You could apply it to anything. You could say, terrorists are gonna be terrorists, so how about we don't vet anyone that comes into the country? Why are we gonna pass regulations vetting Muslims? Vetting anyone, who cares? Let them in, because if the bad guys want to come into the country, they're going to come into the country.
Part of me says someone at the ATF will say, we'll just need to write a letter that says, actually, we looked at it, and the spirit of the existing legislation is such that we want to ban the rapid fire, is what we're getting at, and that wording as it exists is okay to ban these things. The sad truth is, with this situation and a ton of other situations revolving around gun violence, is these things are sold out.
Yeah, they
everywhere.
So the two companies that I mentioned earlier that originally went to the ATF to see whether the device would be legal, their websites have crashed because of high demand. People are super excited and jazzed about it, which is insane. I want to read you a quote from one, I would say, courageous person in admitting to the public that he loves the idea of this part. Let's go to graphic 21. He says, this is a private citizen, but he spoke to the press about it. He says, I don't even have the gun for it, meaning the gun for the bump stock, but I want the stock just to have it down the line. I just like the idea of them and want to see how it feels and if it's worth it. For $100, it's almost not a bad investment to buy it, try it out, and sell it if I don't like it. I mean, just that,
it's a
nonchalant attitude towards something that's used to kill so many people is amazing to me.
It's just like any product, you're introducing an element of scarcity and impending the idea that it would not be around anymore, so people are gonna gobble them up and have them. But that's no reason not to do this. Like, there is every reason to stop the production of these products so that people do not go and get them, so that it does not happen again. And I am really happy that the NRA said this. I hope that everyone understands this is not the only you can't just say bump stock's done, let's move on. There are other items just like this, and if you are going to outlaw the bump stock, which a lot of people say is too hard to use because you have to like push and pull at the same time, these other ones are just like you put your finger in and that's it. We've got to get rid of things that makes semi-automatic weapons behave as automatic weapons.
Agreed.
The difference between the amount of bullets this shooter put off and a fully automatic weapon was 4 bullets in a minute. It was 90 and 94 or something like that, as opposed to in San Bernardino, it was like 24.
Right.
Which is still a lot, but you can't argue against the fact.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, just real quick, just to be fair, that was a statement from the NRA. Some Republicans are also saying that the regulation should be considered. It doesn't necessarily mean that these lawmakers, these Republican lawmakers, want the regulation and are aggressive about it, but they're saying it should be considered.
If you like this video, you probably like independent media. The best way to support independent media, become a member of the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.